Okay, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the NC Live virtual day of the annual conference. We're really excited to have everyone here. This is the Control-Alt-Delete Restarting Your Academic Library Career with Clarity session, and we're starting right now. My name is Daniel Whitehead. I'm the Web and Database Development Librarian at NC Live. And so as the moderator, I just wanted to share a couple things before we get started. So at NC Live events, we value the presence and active participation of all of our attendees. And so by joining us, you agree to uphold principles of our code of conduct, which you can find on our website. And I will also paste it in chat here. I'll put that in the chat as well. And in the interest of time, we're going to put the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A box, which can be found at the bottom on your Zoom toolbar. And I'll be monitoring the Q&A for the chat in case anyone needs help. And also make sure to stay muted during the presentation. The presenter slides will also be posted after the conference if you want to access them later or share them with coworkers or alike. So I'm now pleased to introduce our presenters, Kate Silton and Carlos Grooms. Kate has been an academic librarian for 18 years. She's the electronic resources librarian at Z. Smith Reynolds Library at Wake Forest University. She previously worked at North Carolina A&T State University and St. Edward's University. She holds an MSLS from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a BA in English from Duke. Carlos Grooms is the research instruction librarian at FD Bluford Library at North Carolina A&T State. He's liaison for the College of the Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences and the Center for Excellence. He obtained his MLS degree from North Carolina Central University and his BA in History from Winston-Salem State University. He currently serves as chair for the Roundtable on Ethnic and Minority Concerns, a section of the North Carolina Library Association. And I will now pass it over to Kate and Carlos. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So good morning, everyone, and hello. And that was a great introduction. kind of stole my thunder.
We don't need to introduce ourselves now.
Right. We might as well just dive straight in. But good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with you, and we appreciate you being here, choosing our session this morning. This morning we just want to talk about job transition and the challenges that we face in the field in this process, how this process can potentially impact your mental health wellness, and also provide some tips on how to manage stress levels during the process. So we'll advance our slide. So this is a interactive engagement, and please feel free to scan the barcode or go to menti.com and enter the code. We'll give you a few moments to get logged into there. So we got a thumbs up already. So I hope everyone is doing well today. And I'm gonna admit people in the room as well. Daniel. All right, go ahead. Yeah, hit the like or the thumbs up when you get into the room so we get a good count of the folks that made it.
Looks like we've got 50 people in the session and 21 now in Mentimeter.
Yep. So while you get going, there'll be other opportunities to get logged in. We're gonna advance to the next slide and address some expectations.
Yeah. So we welcome your participation, but it's certainly not mandatory. And your participation will be anonymous via Mentimeter. We are going to display the results of the Mentimeter questions during the presentation, which is being recorded. So keep that in mind. And this presentation will be on NC Live's YouTube channel after the conference. So just, keep that in mind as you respond. And also we wanted to note that discussions of career transitions can be sensitive and personal. So please be respectful of attendees who share their experiences, and also take care when sharing your own during this session.
All right. So y'all have pretty much heard who we are. Such a great opener and introduction. But like we said before, I'm Carlos Grooms. I'm the research and instruction librarian at North Carolina A&T. I used to say I recently got my MLS degree, but time is flying. I got my MLS in 2021 from North Carolina Central, and I have a combined 16 years of public and academic library experience. I had the privilege of working at Elon University as a student success librarian, where we got some awesome work done together. And I think student success librarianship is a model for librarianship of the future because there's a lot of community engagement and student outreach involved in that work. And of course, me and Kate worked together here at North Carolina Central, and we really created this presentation as we both departed from A&T from this HBCU and went into predominantly white private institutions. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to put this presentation together. So, especially after being at an institution for a very long time.
And I am Kate Silton. I'm the electronic resources librarian at ZSR Library at Wake Forest University. And I have been in that position for just over a year. I got my MSLS in 2006, almost straight out of college. Just I had a 2-year gap there. And my first job was actually as an outreach librarian at St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, which is a small Catholic liberal arts school. And I kind of serendipitously took on the role of electronic resources librarian there when the previous person left, and decided I really liked doing that more than I liked doing instruction and outreach. And I've been doing that ever since. And then after several years there, I wanted to come back to North Carolina, and I got a job at North Carolina A&T in Greensboro as their e-resources librarian. And I worked there for 13 years before making this move over to Wake.
All right. So our first Mentimeter question, you can see menti.com at the top and use that code to get logged in. But our first question is, what are some barriers to changing jobs? And so we'd like to hear from folks in the room. Childcare responsibilities.
Inertia, that's a good one.
Yes. Learning curves, absolutely. Pay.
Yep.
Yep. Starting over, absolutely. Feeling too old to start over. That is, oh man, I hate to hear that. Because we need our seasoned library workers to help, pass the knowledge on.
The
So,
exhaustion of applying, we're going to talk about that
oh my
later.
gosh,
How that,
absolutely.
yeah, that in and of itself is a whole journey.
Adjusting to a different culture, we'll definitely talk about that as well. Burnout. So we're hearing a lot of really good responses here. We got 33 responses. That's great. Young family. Yes, and we've heard some of these responses before in previous presentations, and so you're not alone with your issues in changing jobs. So I'm gonna go to the next slide.
So yeah, we gave a similar presentation at NCLA in October, and looking at the responses that we got then, kind of the themes were very similar to the themes that y'all are sharing. Adjustment is a big barrier, just all of the things that go into making that change and having a new job. Money, of course, is a huge one. Location, whether that's not wanting or it's wanting to remain in the same area or being concerned about going to a higher cost of living area. The feeling of a sense of loss from leaving a previous job was a big theme also, because we have so much of our lives are spent at work. It's hard to leave and go to a new one. Concerns about qualifications that we saw mentioned. Some of you mentioned that today as well. Not being sure if you're going to qualify for something different. And then a general sense of fear of the unknown. All of those were kind of the top things that we noticed. And we're definitely seeing those echoed today.
Right. So I'm kind of gonna set this up. This slide here is kind of a framework for understanding, um, the foundations of our mental health and wellness in librarianship. So as we take a look at organizational commitment, understand that there are positive and negative levels of commitment. And it takes a bit of work and self-inventory to maintain a healthy balance of organizational commitment. And so I kind of pieced together different definitions of what organizational commitment is. And here I have the level of engagement and dedication team members feel toward their individual jobs in the organization. And this is basically broken down into three types in previous research. Um, Effective commitment typically are persons who have a strong emotional connection to the organization. They typically see themselves in the organizational goal, in the institutional strategies, plans, and values, and they typically, overall, they have a genuine uh, want to be a part of that institution. And I think out of the three, that's probably the most positive levels of commitment. The continuance commitment, those are individuals who consistently kind of look at pros and cons of leaving despite feeling a need to stay. They feel they have more to gain uh, by staying at a job than to leave. So they fear things like losing their status or losing a set of skills that they've took years to develop. They feel there could be a loss in salary opportunities, a loss in benefits, and a position of seniority. So those are very important things to folks in this category. There, as you hear, it can be some negative things there that impact people's decisions. Normative also kind of gets darker because those are individuals who feel obligated to stay at an organization despite feeling unhappy. And they suppress their desires to pursue better opportunities. They also feel a sense of guilt because the company has invested a lot of time and money in their training, tuition payments to obtain advanced degrees. And typically, you'll see this could be a generational component because there's a lot of background information about folks' upbringing. Um, for an example, I mean, I seen my grandparents get jobs and never leave. Like they stayed there until they retired. I mean, for 30 and 40 years. And they taught us this is this is the way you do it. And maybe that was correct in the 1960s and 70s, but times have changed. Pension plans are not what they used to be, so it's not as incentivized as it once was. But that's folks' upbringing and background. So they typically stay loyal to organizations. So emotional labor and connection to service work also can impact your mental health. Emotional labor requires a lot of mental activity. You have to provide to maintain relationships, and that's a lot of librarianship. What that work is about is maintaining and establishing relationships with our clients or our customers, or patrons, or students, faculty, and staff across our institutions and organizations. So there's a lot that goes into that, especially if those relationships aren't necessarily reciprocated in the same way. So it's very stressful to try and maintain those relationships. And then there's a service work component to it, especially if you're like a public servant or a steward of services and resources. You're forward facing the public and you see a lot of what people are going through. So they come to our libraries to really access resources that can impact their lives. I remember an example of creating a computer course, and my goal initially started out to show senior citizens how to use the computer. But though that program turned into those citizens or senior citizens wanting to access email to learn how to apply for jobs. And, it kind of, I had an idea when I first started out, but it transformed into something else. And you see a real need for this age population to engage technology in a way that they've never had to before in order to apply for jobs. So that was a, a very serious service that we ended up providing. And you become emotionally attached to the people that you're serving and sometimes outcomes of those services. So it's important to manage your emotions in these processes. Um, it's more important now than it ever was before to practice and maintain your emotions during these situations and helping our clients to get what they need, um, no matter how large or small, is extremely important. And the other part of this piece is the work identity. It's it's important for you to have a very complex work identity. A lot of studies have shown that individuals who have low self complexity, they kind of identify themselves through their work, and there's a serious fear of losing their jobs and things like that because it's such a part of their identity, especially during coming out of the pandemic, where the work lines are blurred because a lot of folks work from home, do remote work. So it's hard to see kind of where the workplace stops and where it begins. So take care as you engage in that type of work. Um, and just to end that piece, losing your job or role or the thought of it linked to help. I'm sorry, losing your job is is also an issue when it comes to wealth disparities, but it's also a major component of our identity. So make sure you definitely have a healthy separation between your job and your regular life. So, and I'll recap just a bit, but our next question is which three components of organizational commitment do you identify with the most? Effective commitment are individuals who have a strong self identity to the organizational goals and strategies, plans, and values. Continuance are individuals who weigh the pros and cons despite feeling the need to stay. They feel they have more to gain. by staying at an institution. And normative are those who have that sense of obligation to stay, um, despite feeling unhappy and feeling guilt, and a strong sense of loyalty to a company. And so y'all can see some of the results we have. I think, continuance, even though the research was showing that there can be a lot of negative connections to it, I think there are some positives to it, because it's important to weigh the pros and cons, especially when you considering what's best for you and your families. When you're looking at salaries, you're looking at benefits and things like that. So I think there can be a lot of positivity in that category. I am guilty of finding myself in the effective commitment, really becoming connected to the institution and being a part of its growth. It's interesting. No one selected. I don't identify at all. So
Yeah. You must have done a good job of explaining it then.
right. All right, and we appreciate the feedback. We'll go to the next slide. And so, addressing some of the elephant in the room, is that we all know the library world is very small, and so we want to safeguard our reputations. So um, you want to protect your reputation. Workplace misunderstandings that may occur due to any type of stress or depression that you may have experienced in the past. We know it's a small world. Uh, Things get around. People hear about situations, so you definitely want to protect your reputation, and also reputations of the work environments themselves. People hear about toxic work environments. So, those places you hear about, you would not want to work there, or you may have experienced yourself and you had to get out of there. But yeah, the library world is small and we hear about all of these things. And it will especially have an impact if you're limited on how you can move throughout the landscape. So you may be anchored in your area because of family. You may be the only responsible sibling there to take care of mom or dad. You may want to see your kids finish high school or finish at their schools during that time. And the other impact is the libraries near you. Um, they may not all speak to your skill set. You may be limited in what types of libraries are available to you. So it's important, if you are kind of grounded or anchored in an area, to take inventory of the libraries around you, the type of services they have, um, especially in a time where work is becoming more specialized. So, and also for individuals who aspire to be leaders in libraries. It's only one leader at a library. I mean, as far as the position goes. So it's very finite. Even though there may be a lot of libraries in North Carolina, the positions and opportunities are limited. So you have to, I think, approach changing jobs very strategically. Next slide.
So, some other considerations that we discussed that might factor into whether someone wants to remain at a job or find a new one. And I pulled these kind of from the general library landscape. One thing that was really interesting to me is the work of Katrina Davis Kendrick. She's done a lot of research on low morale in libraries, which she defines as repetitive long-term exposure to workplace abuse and neglect. And her work has shown that there is a lot of low morale going around in the library world. And this can both make an employee want to leave, but it can also make it hard for them to leave, because it can, they might not want to abandon coworkers. They might have a negative self-image of themselves as a worker, because of that. Another concept that I ran across that I thought was really interesting, was the concept of languishing, which is a state between flourishing and burnout. We talk about burnout a lot, but languishing is kind of this middle level where you feel a lack of meaning or you're not finding fulfillment in your work. And this, I think, is really important in a profession like librarianship, where there's an expectation that we're doing this out of like a passion for the type of work. If we don't have that meaning, the meaning that brought us into this work in the first place, that works, and this passion for our jobs that we're expected to have, that can create a lot of discomfort. And then the third thing, which is another elephant in the room, is salary and money. Per the most recent ARL salary survey, salary increases for academic librarians are well below inflation, which I'm sure surprises no one. And that's definitely not just unique to us, but it is an important factor for a lot of people. Often getting a new job is the only way to get a significant pay increase. So that's another factor, I think, for a lot of folks. And as we've been getting feedback in these presentations, a lot of people mention money. That's a really important thing. Despite our connection to our jobs and our love of our jobs, at the end of the day, we still have to pay our bills. So that's another important thing to think about. So can you go to the next slide, Carlos? So as Carlos and I have been talking about job transitions, I think when we did this presentation at NCLA, we focused more on just on the steps in the process of making a transition, like deciding that you want to find a new job and doing a job search. And then once you have a new job, the transition phase where you're preparing to leave, and then starting a new job. And we kind of focused more on like the self-care and the emotional and adjustment piece on the new job end of this. But we realized, talking about this, that you really need to keep in mind your self-care and really checking in with all of the feelings associated with all of these different steps throughout the whole process, that all of them involve adjustment. So we're proposing looking at this as sort of instead of a start to finish process, kind of a cyclical process where you're doing all of this checking in and taking care of yourself while you go through all of these different steps.
So in the job search process of it, there are, a few basic things to do. I think, I put, is it safe in terms of the job search process? Because having a positive relationship with your coworkers, managers, administration is very important, and it's ideal. But it's not always the case, unfortunately, for folks. So, it's important to have a support system around you, whether it's in your library or outside of your library. So sometimes you have to take inventory to know if it's safe to express that you're looking for work, or you can refer to your network and your mentors for references and things like that. So, you'll just have to evaluate that yourself. In the past, I've had support in advancing my career from my managers and deans, and I've been fortunate in that process. But we do know from the literature, there's a lot of folks having challenges in this area. So, and like I mentioned before, if you are individuals that are kind of locked in to your area, researching librarian positions can be extremely challenging, especially if the surrounding area doesn't support your skill set. Um, Maybe you want to stay in academic libraries, but there's more public libraries or school libraries. And those are things that you have to navigate. And also thinking about remote work opportunities may help alleviate that situation because there are more and more opportunities becoming available, especially in librarianship. But also preparing for the job interview can be absolutely stressful. I know there's work being done and explored about this process because they can be long. Um, in the academic space in particular, um, they can last for 8 hours or 2 days. And people are beginning to ask, is this necessary? And rightfully so, because some folks may not be their best in that type of environment. So they're looking at exploring different ways to implement these interview processes. So, but those are things that you as an individual have to be prepared for. Filling out those dreadful um, job applications, and once you finally get an opportunity, now it's time to be on, spending that emotional labor, like I mentioned before, really connecting, doing your best to connect and build those relationships in the process.
So in terms of my job search that got me at my current role, so I'm a very specialized type of librarian, right? Like I'm an electronic resources librarian. Most libraries have, if they have one of them. And I have kind of over the years focused more on the access technology end of that work. So I wasn't looking for positions, for instance, that were like heavy on licensing. So um, I was looking for like very specific opportunities, and I was also not interested in moving. So for my search, a lot of my job search honestly was waiting for opportunities to come along. Um, and I was also I'm not particularly interested in management. I wanted to find a role that would let me grow professionally, but not in that particular way. Also at A&T, I was there for a long time, and librarians at A&T have faculty status, and I had tenure. So that was something to think about. I did not want to, oh, my cat is here. I did not want to work at an institution that was going to make me start my tenure clock over again and go through that process. If I left, I wanted to have kind of the same amount of security as I had in my previous position. And this job at Wake Forest actually ended up checking all of the boxes. It was really closely aligned with my skill set, but it was a very different library. Well, Wake is a smaller school than A&T, but the library actually is bigger, and it serves really different academic programs than A&T does. It's a lot more liberal arts focused. And also Wake Forest is pretty supportive of hybrid and remote work, which was something that I valued. Another factor was that the way their contract structure works, librarians at Wake do have faculty status. And they will bring people in at a rank, commensurate with their experience, instead of making you start over, which actually their setup actually seemed more secure to me than what I had as a UNC system faculty member. So that was that piece of it worked out really well also. In terms of preparing to leave, in my particular situation, I felt very supported by my supervisor and by the dean of the library at A&T. I know they valued my work and wanted me to stay there, but also that they supported me in pursuing opportunities and professional growth elsewhere. So based on those things and the fact that also I was a tenured faculty member, I felt comfortable disclosing to them that I was in this process with Wake Forest, which made having that security was really helpful. And I feel really privileged that I had that. It made it a little bit less stressful to know that this was not completely unknown to everyone. That said, I waited until I had a contract from Wake and that my background check had cleared before I actually resigned. I think it's important to make sure you have your ducks in a row before you resign. Even I was absolutely not worried about my background check, but I still wanted to make sure that everything was settled before I moved on. And I ended up having about 6 weeks in between resigning my job at A&T and moving to Wake Forest, which was probably a little bit too long, but it did give me ample time to work on succession planning, figuring out who is going to cover what pieces of my job during the transition, and also allow me to take some vacation time, which I highly recommend if you can do that in between jobs, to have a little bit of buffer to decompress before you jump into something new. And I also wanted to add, I chose to allow my supervisor to announce my departure to the whole library, which was really helpful in terms of letting people know and not having to tell people one at a time, or have, rumors circulate. And I also chose to have a farewell celebration, which kind of made me uncomfortable a little bit, but I'm actually really glad that I got to celebrate with my colleagues. I think it helped me wrap up that chapter of my career and show me that my work there was meaningful and that I was valued. So I also recommend that, even if it the idea makes you a little bit uncomfortable. I think it can be a good thing to let people celebrate your contributions if that's offered.
Okay. So we got just a few minutes left
Oh
here,
gosh.
but yeah, I know it flew by. So, I would say quickly, succession planning is extremely important. When I left A&T the first time, it was after about 12 years of service. So there was a lot of information to pass off as a staff person. Being involved with research and instruction and keeping the technology updated in the space, being a part of grants and things of that nature. So I had to, create some documentation, and I did something similar at Elon University, being the first in the position as student success librarian. I wanted to document some of the relationships that I made on campus, ideas and programs that we engaged in, so we can so they could continue to foster and nurture those relationships. So I also did an exit interview, and I thought that was important because being a Black librarian male at a predominantly private white institution, I think it's important to get some feedback about my experience. So yeah, I provided that to administration, and but I hope to see the student success librarian position in more institutions. I think that work is becoming more important as we move forward. And I did have an announcement and celebration at both institutions, and it does feel weird, but when you see so many people that show up, and it's a reflection of the type of work that you did, and you know that you made a difference while you were there. So uh, a question here. Well, what are the challenges and successes you've had adjusting to new work cultures? Um, and I will just say, real quick to kind of hurry things along, but one important thing that I did was just to, and I thank my colleagues for this, just to take walks every now and again, to because you feel kind of intense or tense being in a new work environment. You kind of feeling like a fish out of water sometimes, but it's good to kind of take a walk and kind of recalibrate a little bit. and collect yourself. And I found those to be very helpful. I had to get some walking shoes, um, some thick sole shoes, but I really enjoy still to this day taking walks on my breaks and things like that.
Yeah, I think when you've been in one place for a long time and to go somewhere new, even like really small things can be really daunting. Like you don't know how parking works, you don't know how where things are, you don't know where to get coffee. Like there's, all these things that when
Mm.
you're super familiar with a place, you take for granted. Um, coming to Wake Forest, if anyone's ever been to the campus, Wake Forest has a lovely campus. It has a very uniform look. All the buildings have the same brick and the same paint, and everything looks exactly the same. And that was interesting learning my way around because I found the campus really confusing. That was a big change. And I'll also say as a mostly remote person, I felt like I kind of had to work at my engagement with my new colleagues. I definitely came in the office more at the beginning, and but I tried to really proactively get to know my colleagues. I decided to participate in the mentoring program. I see someone mention mentoring in the responses.
Mm.
Also, trying to collaborate with people, come up with excuses to have meetings, just to talk to people and get to know them. Um, so yeah, it looks like we got a
That's
good
we got some
set of
interesting
yeah,
responses.
yeah.
Absolutely exceeding expectations. New staff might be open to new ideas. Yep. Meeting colleagues that can help manage transition has been super helpful.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, having supportive and welcoming colleagues
Right.
is wonderful, and I feel very lucky that I've had that in all of my job transitions.
So thank you all for
Okay.
your feedback.
Okay. And it looks like the challenges and successes are pretty similar from what was
Mhm.
reported here through the other one. And I will say I feel like this group is a little bit more positive than the NC LA group. I'm
Right.
seeing more successes. I know there were like
Right.
4 challenges for every success at the NCLA panel.
Right.
Um, so it's encouraging to see
Right.
more successes this time. Um, should keep moving forward.
Yeah.
I think we've got 7 minutes. So yeah, adjusting to a new institution. I think both Carlos and I could talk a lot about this. Moving from an HBCU to a PWI, even I am obviously a white person, and I have privilege in terms of fitting in at a school like Wake Forest, but it was definitely an adjustment. After working at an institution that is working to make up for decades of discrimination and underfunding, kind of coming to this world of abundance was a bit of a shock. Everything from like how you order office supplies and have your professional development covered and things like that. It's just a lot easier at Wake than it was at A&T, and that was really different. And just learning all the new logistics, all of these things uh, were part of that.
Well, and I'll say too, like coming back to A&T as a faculty member has been very different. Um, so as you know, A&T is transitioning to R1, and things are different. So there was a lot of care coming in, ordering, making sure I had supplies that I need for instruction and being a part of the research, instruction, and engagement unit as a faculty person, travel, budget, and things like that, professional development. So there's been a lot of changes. I mean, it's been a part of it in the past, but I think as we march into R1, I think administration has saw the need to increase those opportunities. So it's been an adjustment even coming back here, and because I'm discovering and learning the campus in a new way I haven't before, and in ways, and I took a lot coming from Elon University because I really got out across the campus to meet a lot of people and work with a lot of different groups. So I'm trying to bring some of those practices here. So, and I'm doing some of those same things, having conversations with students, faculty, and staff, and engaging in campus activities and things of that nature. So, and I know you all are engaging in self-care as well as you work on your jobs, as you transition to new jobs. So we want to know, what are some of those practices that you engage in? Time off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, while our responses come in, one thing that I learned from my transition was that I didn't realize how much of like my capacity was going to be to go towards learning how to do my new job. And I was really tired. It was really hard for me to do anything after work. And yeah, so I think it's important to realize that, you might want to set up things in your personal life to go easy on yourself as much as possible.
Right.
Obviously, you can't eliminate everything, but just knowing that this is going to be, even if it's a really welcome change, it's going to be hard and you're going to be tired.
I love spa day. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is. Getting a massage or a facial. Yep. Connecting with family. I mean, all of these things are very positive and they're very important to managing your stress levels and your mental health because we're all doing important work, high level work, and you don't want to burn out. You don't want to burn out. You want to take care of yourself. So, and I love, and Kate knows like anyone, I love to have a good laugh at work. Um, it's probably what I do best. We thank you for your responses.
And yeah, we're down to 2 minutes now.
Okay.
Do we want to
Yeah, we'll come out.
do we want to try to do questions or if anyone
Did we have any questions?
Yeah, we've got just a couple minutes here. Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. And we have one question queued up, but yeah, if anyone else has questions, we might be able to get to them. And this is one that someone asked. They said, do you have any experience with negotiating pay when given offers from other institutions? It seems uncommon in the library world, but normal elsewhere.
I would say I think it's very common and important. It's not expressed directly, and I think that's where mentors really come in explaining that process. Because Kate mentioned the ACRL research about salaries and librarianship and how they're just low. And so, yeah, it's important to make sure you understand where you are in the threshold. Like you're
Yeah.
at the bottom percentile or middle. So those are very important.
Yeah.
And really advocate for that and any type of professional development funding that you can get to support you in the role.
Yeah, I definitely recommend doing as much research as you possibly can about what kind of the norm is for salaries at that library. If you're applying for a job in the UNC system, all of those salaries are public. So you can see how much everybody makes, and
Right.
that can help you figure out kind of what your number might be that you want to make sure that you're getting. I think, yeah, I think it's really important to have an idea of what you want to make and be ready to ask for that.
Absolutely. It's a good question.
Yeah, I really like the idea of using, like we said, that public data that's available. That seems like a really, really good strategy. I don't see any other questions in chat or in the Q&A. So maybe give folks maybe another 30 seconds. I know we have the keynote in just a bit, and I'm actually going to drop the schedule link in chat as well. So if anyone wants to check out some other sessions that we're doing, those will, oh, hang on. I messaged that directly to you, Kate. There we go. Put it to everybody instead. But yeah, so we've got Meredith Farkas in just a few minutes here. And yeah, I think I don't see any other questions, but yeah, thanks guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
Absolutely.
everyone. Thanks for coming. We really appreciate you listening.
Absolutely. And
And our contact info is in the slide. So if you have questions or if this is something you're interested in and want to chat with us about, please let us know.